Glenn Beck Watch, Monday, April 5th, 2010, keeping track of the neo-Birchist rhetoric. Today, our beloved so-called libertarian conservative, Glenn Beck, decided to tell us about the latest threat to our liberties. So, Glenn Beck, tell us, what's destroying America now? Net neutrality. Now, net neutrality is both a principle of the current internet as well as a proposed regulation. As a principle, it's been that way since the way the internet has worked since when it was created. When you buy internet service, you get equal access to all of the internet at the same bandwidth that you purchased from your provider. Your provider isn't allowed to say, oh, you can go on Bing at full speed, but if you go on Google, we're going to add on a couple seconds of latency and make it time out and stuff. Now, I am a free market supporting libertarian with a slight mutualist bent. I don't exactly like regulation, especially in the long term, but even then I can understand the principle behind net neutrality. Well, at least for now. Why? Because in America, we don't have the free market for internet access. In my little suburb in Long Island, if you want high-speed internet access, you have to go with either Cablevision or Fios. That's it. Because you can't enter the market and challenge these two companies if they decide to inflate their profits above market rates. That's illegal. You see this little thing called franchise agreements, whereby incumbent telephone and cable companies will go and establish monopoly of control over government by literally signing an agreement with your town or city government, which says that they have a monopoly over a particular type of service, and they are the only ones that are allowed to use the poles. That's why Cox, Cablevision, Comcast, Time Warner Cable, I think there's another one, all these cable companies, they don't compete against each other, even though the FCC has tried to encourage overbuilding. These cable companies, thanks to government interference, have pretty much established their own little fiefdoms. Government essentially says, no, you can't compete at a market rate. We're going to make you compete at a much higher monopoly rate. So, even though I normally am opposed to regulation, I can at least understand net neutrality. Glenn Beck doesn't. He doesn't understand the internet. That's why he calls a bunch of guys typing on our computer in their underwear in our mom's basement. Excuse me, Mr. Beck. I'm recording this thing in my upstairs bedroom, and I'm wearing SpongeBob pajamas. I'm not in my underwear. That being said, if you use the internet for more than 5 minutes, he'd probably find actual libertarians. He says he's a libertarian. What does that mean? Well, now it means nothing but what he wants it to be. Where do you think Ron Paul got all his campaign funding? Oh, wait, he doesn't care about that. Glenn Beck still thinks Ron Paul's a domestic terrorist. Now, Glenn Beck's entire critique of net neutrality, if it can be called this, isn't really related to net neutrality. He doesn't even explain what it is. He just says it's a government takeover of the media. It's not a takeover because the media is already government run. What do you think the FCC is? He doesn't seem to understand this. Instead, he takes his entire segment and does nothing but complain about free press. This is just one of the organizations that's fighting for net neutrality. It's not just free press. There's the EFF, the FSF. I'm pretty sure the OSI has something to say about it. Everyone wants a neutral internet, because when they buy internet service, they expect internet service. Not Google service, not Yahoo service, not YouTube service, internet service. Instead, Glenn Beck doesn't understand this, so he points out free press has one guy who's apparently a Marxist, and says some very Marxist things about how he wants to shut up capitalist rhetoric or something, and how this whole net neutrality thing is really just a Marxist plot to shut up the media. Here's a hint, Glenn Beck. The reason why liberals hate and fear you is that they legitimately think you're Hitler. When you say when you get up there and you say your nice little neo-Birchist rhetoric, people see that. And what they see, some people actually act on that. Like that guy that threw a plane into an IRS building and actually killed a guy. Yeah, I know, you don't want that. Because you yourself have said you're for peaceful something. But if they see you saying this Tea Party rhetoric and this Neo-John Birch Society rhetoric, and they see people act on that. And you gotta realize, your words have actions. Now, going back to the Marxist angle, a while ago, Glenn Beck said that anyone who's in a church that preaches social justice needs to get out of that church because it's filled with Marxists. Apparently, social justice means that you're a Marxist. I seem to remember a certain messianic figure, around about 2 to 7 AD, preached something that sounded like this: violently attacked some bankers in Jewish temples at least once, told a bunch of people to stop stoning a prostitute because they were also imperfect. I believe his name was something, Joshua of Nazareth. I think we just call him Jesus now, but he preached a lot about social justice. And we thanked him for this by nailing him to a cross. Now, I'm bringing this up because Glenn Beck is apparently a Mormon, a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I am too. So this personally affects me when he's going around saying this because, well, what do you think about their own church? The way I see my church is that we have our own voluntary welfare system. And we talk about social justice. Unlike you, Glenn Beck, who says it's Marxist to be a Christian. If you go to any Christian church, they're going to have their own voluntary socialist schemes. They're going to have their own voluntarily redistributed schemes. Because guess what? If you're a Christian, you're supposed to care about the poor. You're not supposed to go around red-baiting the poor. Now, he mentioned this a bit in the episode, and by a bit, I mean he found the first guy he could find as a Marxist who said this, and said, we're all a bunch of Marxists for complaining about his social justice comment. Glenn, you don't understand this. Sojourners is complaining about this. I'm complaining about this. Everyone thinks you're retarded when you say this. BYU scholars are going on MSNBC and saying you're retarded. Well, they're not saying retarded. They're saying this in much nicer language, but they're saying that the words that are coming out of your mouth do not correspond with the actions of the church that you think is representing you. Otherwise, why would you be in the Mormon church if you think they're a bunch of Marxists? Obviously, I've seen you talk. You talk once about addiction. You were much better talking about addiction than you were doing talking about politics. So, instead of red-baiting Christians, you might want to, actually read the Bible. This has been Glenn Beck Watch for April 1st, 2010. Keeping track of the neo-Birchist rhetoric.